Are you ready? All right, next we've set aside 10 minutes for public comment. Being that my policy guys are here today, you're going to enjoy me reading this policy to you. As I've said, we set aside 10 minutes for public comment, twice during our meeting, once in the beginning and once in the end. Any group or organization wishing to address the board must identify a single person and to do the speaking. During open session, presentation should be as brief as possible. Speakers may comment on any school-related matters during the open session. However, speakers presenting complaints must have gone through the established complaint procedures. The board will not permit in public session discussion involving any individual district personnel or students. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual district personnel or students must or should present their comments or concerns to the superintendent during the regular business hours. We do not permit any obscene language, libelous statements, threats of violence, statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice. They will not be tolerated. All right, so that is our beginning of our public comment. So as I asked you to remember, please speak in concepts and not about specific people. All right.
Where would you like me?
Come up this way so the microphone that's near Pauline can pick you up.
So my name is Robert Burnham. I reside at 393 Duquette Road here in Beekmantown. I'm here tonight in regard to Board Policy 2150. On January 16, 2019, I emailed each and every one of you board members a question regarding why Board Policy 2150 was not followed in regard to filling the vacancy created with the resignation of board member Sharon Drown on September 28, 2018. For the last 27 business days, no one from the Beekmantown Central School District Board of Education has responded to my question or email. Your silence speaks volumes. So I'm here tonight before you again to ask the question.
Mr. Burnham, can I interrupt you for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Did I respond to you?
You responded that.
And I just want, I'm not trying to be confrontational, but I did respond to you, and I am the agent of the board, so I was responding.
Your last email response to me stated that you work for the board.
I do work for the Board of Education. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But, okay.
I would have expected, Dan, something from the board.
And also, if Mr. Mannix responds, we all get it too. So that's probably why no one else responded, is because he responded.
Well, anyways.
I think I responded, I told you it was a matter of litigation with Andrew Brockway. I don't think I said, I did tell you at one point I worked for the board, but I told you we couldn't respond because it was in the courts.
I have a copy of the email.
Okay, I just wanted to...
If you want me to dig it out.
I do want to remind everyone, we've kind of gotten away from how public comment is supposed to work.
There you go.
It's actually a comment time for public. So you have, as long as no one else has to speak, you have a few more minutes left. So go ahead.
So again, I'm here tonight to ask you, this time in public, why Board Policy 2150 was not followed, and why this current Board of Education feels they do not have to respond to a simple question asked by a taxpayer, asked by a stakeholder in the district. Specifically, I was not given that opportunity for the equal opportunity to interview for the vacant board position in September. Okay, I followed all policy procedures as outlined in your Board of Education policy manual. I was contacted by Mrs. Menard on Wednesday, November 7th, for an interview on Thursday, November 8th. Fortunately, I wasn't in the area. I was in Florida at the time. I stated this and said specifically that I wouldn't be back in the town until November 10th. at which time I would be available to interview. I followed this up with an email. I easily could have done the interview via video conferencing, such as Skype, which I see now is perfectly acceptable. However, no alternative was given to me. Could it be that you already chosen your candidate and therefore felt that you didn't have to follow through with the interview process, despite specific policy language on filling vacant board seats? So on tonight's agenda, again, I see that there's a veiled attempt to revise Board of Education Policy 2150. I don't know how to take this. Should I take this as an admission of wrongdoing on your part, acknowledging that you didn't follow your own policy? The way I look at it, there's nothing wrong with Board Policy 2150 as it's currently written. And actually, it was revised in January of 2017, 2 years ago. The problem comes when you, the Board of Education, fail to follow your own policy. This is a $42 million plus business. When elected officials and boards fail to follow your own policies, the results create chaos and distrust. Okay? Board becomes nothing more than, to quote Mr. Laidman, a big clown circus. And the entire district suffers because of board neglect. So my question again is, what other policies has this board neglected or failed to follow? How can I, as a taxpayer and as a stakeholder in this district, trust this board with my children's education when a simple policy such as 2150 isn't being followed? So again, I'm here tonight hoping that someone on this board has the courage, has the responsibility to answer my questions. Thank you, and I will see you at the next board meeting in March.
All right, is there anyone else that would like to approach the board at this time? All right, seeing that we have no one, we will move moving on to presentations. And I'm very excited to present our Model UN students, and Scott Tuller, Hillary Sponable, Declan Giltz, okay, sorry, Cameron Kuchar, and Grant. Oh, great. I'm sorry, if you guys could see his handwriting,
Yes.
you understand why I'm happy I can tell that from reading that. All right, thank you very much. Come on.
I think Gary's got it going. Do you have a clicker? I've never used it. So I'll let you try it.
Okay, I'll try. Well, I'll start off by telling you that I could talk about this till 2 in the morning, but I won't do that to you. First of all, I'd like to recognize the 5 delegates that came back from Harvard this year being recognized. And it's amazing because I can't describe to you the intensity of the experience for those kids. 3,000 of them in a conference. And we brought home 5 awards. Way to go. It's excellent. They're hardworking, great kids. Our program at Beekmantown has been supported by you for years, by parents for years, by in-house administration, teachers, students, faculty. It's been fabulous, and I appreciate that from all of you. We have 3 conferences. The 3 main conferences that we do are BMUN, which we run right here in this building, which is a starter conference for first-time ever students. This year we have our entire 9th and 10th grade classes in social studies attending. It's their opportunity to begin the process of participating in a democratic institution, learn the empathy, the public speaking, the research, all the necessary skills, parliamentary procedure, and so on. Not only do our 9th and 10th grade students take part, but Prue sends first-timers, Ausable sends them, Shazy, I'm going to get this wrong, E-Town, and one other. Saranac. No.
Lake, I think.
No. I'll start again. E-Town, Ausable, Peru, Shazy, Elizabethtown. Northeastern, yes, okay, thank you very much. And it's going to be a great conference. We probably have close to 400 students here on Thursday. And that's the starting ground. In 2 weeks from now, we go to the North Country Model United Nations, which includes all the North Country schools. And we are very, very competitive there, thanks to these folks. Last year we won 16 awards. We were the best delegate in 3 out of the 7 committees. So congratulations to you. And that's our program. And thank you very much. And I will close with this. I want to thank Ms. Sponable for doing a great job taking over from us old guys that have been running Harvard for a long time. And she obviously did a really good job with this group. And I've been on that trip with her. And the one thing that's really important to note about Ms. Sponable is she pays attention to kids. And if you send kids off-site, what more could you ask for from a teacher? So I'll show you just a couple things. There we go. That's our crew. Cole Denton, Grant Moravik, Cameron Kucher, Declan Gills, Zoe Danville. Thanks, Hillary. Thank you all.
And I just wanted to speak a little bit about our Harvard Model UN experience this year. So the district really set us up very well to have a great experience. So when we're in this huge hotel complex in downtown Boston, the Wi-Fi is kind of spotty. So one of our students last year thought, what a good idea, we should get the hotspots from the tech department. So they got one. This year we brought 6, and they really helped quite a bit. I know that Grant was using it outside the conference center, and other people were working together with that. So I think that really helped. That we were able to be connected, having Chromebooks was very helpful. Other ways that we really appreciate the district is our librarian helped us because we decided to make sure that things were cited properly. So she came into one of our meetings and showed us how to do citation properly and work with different extensions for Google Docs. And they can speak about it, but Google is really the way that collaboration happens at these conferences with people from all over the world. They're all working on a Google Doc together, forming solutions. So that was really great to see them being prepared in the technology field as well. I do have some pictures.
Oh, sorry.
Left side.
Side wheel.
I got it. Okay, so here are some pictures from Boston. On our left is our whole crew. We brought 13 students this year, and they debated many things from law of the oceans to universal basic income and all kinds of topics that are really current and actually being debated today in the United Nations. So we have some pictures where they're working together. I do include a picture there because we do have mandatory fun. So we do go off-site. We went to an aquarium this year. We took a very interesting trip to the residential area of Boston to get some Polish food, which is as close as we could get to Ukrainian food. And you can see Declan up there just running the show, talking about universal basic income. One of the other opportunities that we had this year was to go to St. Lawrence Model UN. So Declan's brother Connor was on our Model UN team, and he brought it to St. Lawrence, where he goes to college. Actually, the first Model UN conference ever was at St. Lawrence University, and Connor wanted to bring it back. So he spoke very highly and in a very long email about how wonderful Model UN is and how he wanted to continue it. So we brought a crew there a few weeks ago, and all 4 of the students that we brought won awards. So we had Best Delegate, Outstanding, and Honorable Mention, and 2 Best Delegates there, debating all kinds of things like the Yemen Civil War and all kinds of nerdy things that I won't get into. But it was really great to see that legacy from having students here could bring it to another university and invite regional schools, so it kind of is continuing throughout the North Country, not just at our conferences that we go to, but to this new conference that we went to this year. So I will stop talking so that they can talk a little bit about their experience. So first, doesn't matter who goes first.
I'll just stay here.
Okay.
So it is a great experience. I know we meet a lot of people on our own committees because we're all on like our own individual committees, and we meet people that come from all over the world, like Venezuela, China, UK, and it just helps. Like as a student's perspective, it really broadens our horizon. especially when we do talk to like the plethora of kids that come from Venezuela, we learn how world issues affect people differently, and how like life isn't just Chromebooks at school. You actually have to like fight for your own life outside of your house. And like having Chromebooks at conference is really great. Just having the Chromebook in general. It's nice to be able to type on the docs, but with the added internet with the hotspots really helped us, because these are kind of useless on Google without the actual Google enabler. But for like a good handful or a good chunk of us in the club, a lot of us don't have high-end laptops that we can bring with us. So having a school-issued computer is really helpful, especially when we type for the majority of the time we're at conference.
Hi, my name is Declan Giltz. I'm a senior here. I've been doing Model UN for 4 years. I started out here at Beekmantown, and I was introduced to it by my brother. And it's had a very profound impact upon my life. I think that the experiences with Model UN are probably the ones that I am going to remember 40 years down the line. I may not remember what I learned in algebra, but I'm going to remember the Namibian student who I worked with in Harvard Model UN. I have broadened my horizons specifically, and I now know that I want to go to college for economics because of the experiences I've had at Model UN. And outside of my own experience, graduated students that have experienced Model UN and take part in it have said that it's opened doors for them at university. A student, Lexi Marking, who graduated 2 years ago, recently went to the United Nations in a youth leadership tour, and she said mostly because of her experiences with Model UN that she was admitted. I think that the experience and value of Model UN can definitely not be overstated. Harvard Model UN was one of the most fun experiences of my life, and I'm really sad to see it go. Though I will be participating on the collegiate level, I think that the way that Beekmantown has presented it has been fantastic. I'd like to thank my advisors, Mr. Tuller and Mrs. Sponable, because they could not have done a better job at introducing this to us. I have gained numerous skills, specifically problem solving, and I was not a very good public speaker when I started out. I was rambly and I would often go off topic, but I think that through my experiences in Model UN, I have strengthened those skills, and I will continue to use those skills that I have learned in the future. Thank you.
Alrighty, my name's Grant Moravec, and like Declan, I've been doing Model UN since the 9th grade, and it has taught me just so much in terms of everything, really. You know, not only do you learn the obvious skills of public speaking and like how to write and participation in government, but you also just learn a lot about hard work yourself. For Harvard Model UN, it's not like we go in every weekend and Ms. Sponable teaches us what is Ukraine's policies, how do we solve this issue. It's up to us ourselves to figure out and learn what we need to do. So as a result, we have to work and focus on our own ability to succeed, because it's not teachers helping us, it's ourselves. And if our success depends directly on that. And obviously, by being a part of this, you just grow so much as a person, you know? As great as a classroom is, a lot of it can come down to hand-holding. And by having this opportunity to push yourself with yourself and not with the teacher or your friends, but to show yourself that you want this and yourself are going to work that hard, is truly a great experience. Like Declan and Cameron, my public speaking has improved so much. I remember as a freshman, Mr. Tuller had us all give a presentation, and I was just, you know, I wanted to do it. I wasn't like terrified, but when I got up there, I just remember I couldn't barely hear myself speak over my own heartbeat, and I was pausing and rambling. And from going to Model UN, and you just basically in front of a conference with hundreds of kids who are from all over the world, and you have to talk about what to do with hybrid regimes in Egypt and Russia and how your country thinks about it. And that sort of it just brings up this new level of skill that you never would have thought you had. And so that can be applied to everything, really, because it teaches you that you can get better, you can face those difficult challenges. So many people who are part of the Harvard Model UN team I've watched them grow so much as a person, just by going to one conference. It teaches them about hard work, it teaches them about their progress, because we don't always do as well as we want to. There are several times where you go to a conference, you don't get the award you hoped for, you get gypped or something like that, and it hurts. However, you feel that fire, that passion, and you want to come back next year. And I can tell you without a doubt that many of us do that. And I guess on the technical side too, the Chromebooks and what are they, the wireless internet?
Hotspots.
The hotspots are pretty indispensable. The committee for Harvard Model UN is really cutthroat, and every kid is trying as hard as they can to succeed. And so if you you're spending like 10 minutes just trying to find the internet and all the kids writing, you're basically like 10 minutes behind everyone else, and they're going to try to take advantage of that to push you down. And so having those Chromebooks and having that hotspot so that you can go up and be ready with people, and be the first person in the cafe when everyone walks in already working on it to like kind of show off a little. It's really important. And I can say I want to get into politics later, and I can absolutely thank Model UN for that, because it just taught me of like what the value of helping the world is. Even if it's not real, it's still education,
Stand. Can I just close by saying congratulations to all the students that participated. And Mr. Toller, you both gave great thanks to the administration and to the board for supporting you guys. But I can't, when we see great people supporting our kids, we always try to fund that. If it's good for kids, we're going to try to do it around here. And so for you guys to start that program or carry it through, and then for Mrs. Sponable to come on board and really take it from a high level and to just keep it at such a high level, or maybe to make it move higher, because actually you guys didn't have Chromebooks until she got involved, I'm pretty sure.
No, we didn't.
Right, so anyways, it was...
When I first started, we had to go to the McGill Depository Library and read print. That's the closest UN depository library that we had. So it's been a big change. The technology has changed a lot, and it's things happen really, really quickly. And the kids have adapted very well. And us older people are starting to adapt.
Yeah. So, but to see the whole thing keep going and keep going at a high level, I'm just so appreciative as an administrator here. So thank you, everybody. And congratulations.
All right. If you guys would like to go home, it is school night. We get it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Congratulations.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Our next report will come from our attorney, Douglas Gearhart.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. And I was asked to give an update on some of the ongoing litigation that the district's been involved in. It's been a fairly rigorous year with respect to litigation. We have historically not really had that in this district. My firm has represented you for about 6 years now, and year in and year out, we handle a variety of operational issues and nuanced legal issues that come up. But there's not there really hasn't been a real plethora of litigation to speak of, and billing has been fairly modest from us, which I think is a good thing for a school district, because it indicates you don't have a lot of controversy and a lot of strife, which is usually what prompts litigation. It's been a little different over the past 7 months. We've had a little bit more going on. So I was asked to just give an overview, because the expenditures on the legal line for the district has been significant. We've had some significant things coming up. So I'm going to go through a little bit at a sort of a higher level, but if anybody wants to ask any questions throughout, just please chime in. I work for you, so if you have a question on what I say, feel free to interrupt. Your legal bill between our firm and a couple of others that have done some work for you since July of this year, that is beginning of the 18-19 school year, is hovering right around $95,000. That's a high number. It's a high number for any district this size. That's really far beyond what it probably really should be when all things are considered. There's a number of reasons for that. We, as you know, have been present at most of your board meetings since July. and that has contributed to that tremendously. The time preparing for board meetings, being at board meetings, debriefing afterwards is significant. And frankly, the reason that we've been present is because there was, as you know, from July on up until fairly recently, a number of confrontations taking place at the board meeting by one of your former board members, and many of those issues that brought up were, far afield from what the board was discussing, and there were challenges that were being made that were really not accurate. And I think that the leadership of the board particularly was thinking we really need someone here to make sure that we're doing everything right, we're following the rules that we're supposed to be following, and so on. So that resulted in a lot of the fees. And another element of sort of, and I'll characterize this sort of as a general operations matter, is FOIL requests. Since roughly since July, and then let me just preface that a FOIL request, Freedom of Information Law request, is a request for documents from a public body. Anybody can make one. You don't have to be a resident. You don't have to be anybody in particular. You just make a FOIL request. They're issued all the time by newspapers and so on, the routine for the most part. This year, they can be nuanced. There's literally hundreds of decisions by the Committee on Open Government, New York State Committee on Open Government, on FOIL, on what is and isn't disclosable, what is and isn't a record, and there's real nuances with respect to it. It's not just as though here's a piece of paper, we're a public entity, it's disclosable. It's far more complicated than that. Since roughly July through January, we've had 9 different FOIL requests, none of which have been simple, none of which have been easy, all but 2 of which were issued by your former board member, Andrew Brockway, requesting things like emails and texts between specific employees and board members, emails between board members, billing statements from attorneys, records of phone calls, records of emails, text messages, including text messages between the records access officer herself and myself. So those become very nuanced to respond to because FOIL requires you to provide to the public, anybody who asks, public records, but then there's a whole host of exceptions to disclosure. For example, legal bills are asked for. For the most part, legal bills are not readily disclosed in their entirety because they typically contain some form of legal advice that's protected by the attorney-client privilege, which is governed by the New York State Civil Practice Law and Rules. So those can't simply be disclosed. They might be disclosed, but then redacted. So you have to go through literally piles and piles of emails piles and piles of bills, and then redact them so you demonstrate the record exists, but the content of it is not disclosable because it falls under one of the FOIL exceptions. For most of the records that were asked for, those were the issues that came up, whether there was an exception that applied. Someone wants a personnel record. Certainly we have a personnel record for everybody who worked here, but those are records that in large measure would contain confidential information that if disclosed would be an undue invasion of personal privacy, an exception to disclosure under FOIL. But you don't know that until you look at it. So reviewing all those FOIL requests with the records access officer and providing that guidance takes a ton of time. And between coming to board meetings, dealing with those FOIL requests, that was an enormous amount of time and energy that was really something we never had in previous years. Those were more routine. And not something we were reached out for. There were, another big chunk of time and effort and money was spent on harassment complaints. There was a harassment complaint filed back in July regarding intimidation of board members. That was looked into just as we would look into any harassment complaint that might be filed by a member of the staff against somebody in the district. Separate counsel, not our firm, was hired to do that. They in turn hired an investigator to look into this. That's common practice. We do it all the time. When we have we're doing an investigation, we might hire someone outside. And the reason for that is if it ends up in litigation, the attorney who was hired as special counsel isn't the attorney who ends up being the fact witness in the matter. So that's what happened here, and that really took a great deal of time. 15 different witnesses, extensive documents were reviewed, many meetings were by the investigator, came up here, meeting with people, and then producing a report that was probably 20-some odd pages. So, that contributed tremendously to what we had before us throughout a good portion of the fall and the late summer. Along the same lines, a Title IX investigation was undertaken. Again, this was an investigation based on the complainant and the person complained about. It was brought to an outside firm, again, not our firm, but that required additional time and effort. Normally, we'll do a Title IX investigation. We'll have a Title IX coordinator that's designated in the district. They'll do an investigation internally. But when members of the higher levels of leadership of the district or the board are involved, which was the case here, it was prudent to hire someone outside to do that investigation. That, again, required additional effort. In December, I believe it was December, former board member Brockway filed an Article 78 proceeding against the district, just for everyone's benefit and for the record. Article 78 refers to Article 78 of the Civil Practice Law and Rules, a section of New York State law that allows a individual or a group to file with the court saying that the decision of an administrative body was arbitrary and capricious and was done wrong. Court, please overturn it. That's essentially what an Article 78 proceeding is. They're filed against municipalities, school districts with some regularity. Mr. Brockway filed that Article 78 proceeding, it was commenced November 13th. You may recall the papers were provided to the board clerk or to the board right prior to the board meeting. And they were filed with what's known as an order to show cause, which is essentially a temporary restraining order, prevented the board from acting on the appointment of a new business official. So the board at that board meeting couldn't do what it was intending to do because this proceeding was started by a board member. The proceeding, and I'm going to give you a little bit of detail because it probably pays to understand this a little bit. In the proceeding, Mr. Brockway sought to declare all the actions that the board took on November 6th deemed to be. He asked that the court decide those actions were to be deemed unlawful and nullified. And those actions included advancement of 2 potential candidates for the position of school business executive. He sought to have the court deny. This one's complicated. So at the October 9th board meeting, the board acted on a contract with UW Marks. What Andy Brockway sought in this court action was to undo that resolution to approve the contract with UW Marks.
It should be noted that he approved that contract. I just wanted to throw that.
I was trying to decide whether I should say that now or later. The odd thing about that is, although he sought to declare that undone by the court, that contract was approved with his consent at that very board meeting. So he's essentially asking the court to say what he did in part was wrong. So he also sought to have the board meeting on November 7th declared unlawful because due to a lack of a quorum, statutorily insufficient notice, failure to disclose the date publicly on the website, and he also asked to have he also sought to have the declaration of Jeremy Connors to appoint to the vacant seat also deemed improper. He wanted to have board member Stone compelled to disclose her residential address. Wanted to compel the president and superintendent to include any items suggested by other members of the board on future agendas. Wanted to compel myself to respond and communicate directly to him and provide him legal guidance. And sought to enjoin the district from employing a particular member of the administrative staff of the district. So those are all the things. He went to court and he said, do this, court. So now the court issued this order to show cause, this restraining order saying we can't appoint one of the people that actually Ms. Parliament on that date. So we weren't able to appoint Ms. Parliament on that date, but within 2 days or 3 days after that, it was a week after that, my firm went to court and said, Judge, I think, with all respect, this order to show cause was not properly issued, and the judge agreed with us and undid the order to show cause, and his parliament was then appointed in the next board meeting, and things moved on. We also made a motion to dismiss the entire complaint, and we made a number of legal arguments with respect to why the matter should be dismissed in its entirety. And again, just for your purposes, when you ask for a motion to dismiss, essentially what you're telling the court is, look, even if you assume everything that's being complained about is true, it still doesn't amount to a legal action. So that's a pretty significant thing to say. Dismiss the whole thing. There's no real form or substance in the legal action. The judge agreed with us, and he started out in his decision. I'm not going to read the decision, but it's a public decision. You can certainly all have it. He made particular mention that Article 78 requires that a legislative body, in this case the Board of Education, is held to a standard that it can't act arbitrarily and capriciously. And synthesizing what he said nothing that was presented to him comes to the level of being arbitrary and capricious. He also noted that it's Hornbook law that in Article 78 cannot be used to challenge an administrative decision when there's an administrative procedure to do so. And Hornbook law, basically a Hornbook is like an encyclopedia of law. They're green books. When you're in law school, you love the green book, the Hornbook. It makes everything really clear. Then you read cases and you realize it's a little less clear. But Hornbook law basically says this is just the law. And what the judge said here is it's just the law. You don't go to court when you can have an administrative proceeding. And the judge said, in this case, you don't go to court here. If you wanted to complain about the board decision, you go to the commissioner. So wrong forum. He noted that in Mr. Brockway's in his petition, he made issue with respect to claim that the board didn't follow Robert's Rules of Order. The judge said, well, that Robert's Rules of Order, and I know you all have the plain English language version of it right here, which is great. But he says it's widely used and outlines parliamentary procedures, and it is well adopted and commonly adopted as guidance for governance, but it does not compel particular action. And the court specifically examined the board's actions and finds, quote, no improprieties sufficient to satisfy the legal burden of under an Article 78. He goes through all of the actions that Mr. Brockway challenged. He found them not to be subject to overturning by the court. He did, relevant to something that was brought up earlier, one of the challenges that Mr. Brockway brought to the court was this issue of the appointment of someone to fill the vacancy on the board. And Mr. Brockway indicated in his papers that he claims that the input of only 3 board members was considered and that the process occurred without notice to all of those entitled. And the court specifically said these arguments are without merit. He indicated that Board Policy 2150 does not require every applicant to be interviewed. He went on to say, rather, its objective is to assure an orderly process in which each candidate receives equal consideration. Additionally, where a subcommittee of members act merely as in an advisory capacity without authority to dictate the outcome, the provisions of the open meeting law are not necessarily applicable. And then he said, and then the judge went on and basically found that in light of all of the fact that the board members were informed of every candidate for the vacancy, ranked them accordingly with respect to partiality, highest to lowest, the court deems the process to have been fair and in compliance with statute and policy. So I think it's important for you to know, because that kind of removes any question with respect, I think, to the claim that 2150 wasn't followed with respect to that.
Can I add to that? Just so everyone knows, we actually had 2 clients that could not attend that evening.
Candidates? You said clients.
I'm sorry, candidates. 2 candidates that could not attend that evening. We didn't reschedule either one of them. It's not fair to reschedule one and not reschedule the other. So we kept that decision consistent.
And in the context of this proceeding, this legal proceeding, that's not an arbitrary decision. That's a reasonable decision. So a court's not going to overturn that. And it's within your authority to do that. There's no rule that says you have to one way or the other. And I realize I'm getting into the weeds here, but I think what I'm hoping the takeaway from all of this case is is either the court said that what the board did was proper, or in the case, for example, of the self-evaluation process that was challenged in the case, the court found that the entire issue that was brought up was moot because the court did in fact do an evaluation process. And the court went on to say the petitioner, meaning Mr. Brockway's, remaining dissents are likewise unavailing. With respect to Ms. Stone and her residency, the court found Ms. Stone attested to her residency within the district, and there's no offer of evidence to the contrary. Done. So, regrettably, this took a tremendous amount of effort and time. We really effectively went to court twice. One, to remove the restraining order preventing us from hiring Ms. Parliament, and second, to issue the motion to dismiss, which we won in its entirety. So, the judge ruled that the motion to dismiss is granted in its entirety. The entire Article 78 is dismissed. So, I know that's more detailed than normal, but I think it's important to just go through each of those to sort of have you walk away as a board assured you acted properly in each of the claims against you. Regrettably, it cost an awful lot of time, an awful lot of effort. You all provided affidavits with respect to some parts of this, so you're aware of that. But litigation's expensive, it's time consuming. We got it right, we did it right, we got a good result, but it took a lot. And then the last piece of litigation, perhaps one of the most unusual I was involved in, although we had special counsel working on it, was the petition to remove Mr. Brockway. You approved that on January 8th, shortly after the January 8th meeting, based on the actions of Mr. Brockway at that meeting, and that matter is still pending. But at this point, that is still open litigation. But I'll just highlight that for the purposes of letting you know that's yet another piece of litigation we have ongoing that under the normal course and circumstances in a district we don't typically see that. So that's sort of a quick maybe not so quick snapshot of litigation that we've been involved in, the work we've been involved in, the other firm that you're working with closely on some of these matters, Gerben Filazzo. They've been very helpful and all in that. So I'm sorry, I'm pausing because Pauline, do you have a question?
Yeah.
No. Okay. I couldn't tell the way she was. So.
No, she's struggling to hear.
Okay. Tried to be loud. So let me stop there, and I guess with a lot of this litigation, let me end with this. With the bulk of this litigation resolved or wound its way kind of through and down, I would expect that your seeing of me at board meetings will decrease. Unless you want otherwise, and I think the litigation hopefully will be on the downturn for the remainder of the school year. So let me stop there and see if there's any questions from anybody. Well, thanks. I hope I answered.
Do you think there's any way we could have avoided any of our litigation costs?
Yeah. Certainly the removal proceeding that is still pending is something that could have been avoided with, more appropriate action that the commissioner hasn't deemed to be, grounds for removal. And the Article 78, which was a tremendous time and effort, judge basically said this is not something ripe for litigation. I think that everything that was in that Article 78 is something that could have very easily been handled just in the manner, of course, of a board and superintendent relationship. Hey, I'm interested in, finding out why we did this. Just asking basic questions, not even necessarily at a board meeting. I mean, that's how it would routinely happen. It's
we're having dialogue at the board meeting.
Having dialogue at the board table. Yeah, I mean, it is. Maybe it's stating the obvious, but for a board member to bring an action against the board, our firm represents about 140, 150 school districts around the state. I've been doing this for 20 years. This is the first time that's ever happened. Doesn't mean, maybe I just have, they're all great school districts, they don't do that, but that's really unusual to happen. So, as an appeal to the commissioner, as is, frankly, your presence at a board meeting. Normally we're not at your board meetings, you know that. You typically don't need that. So, a lot of this could have been avoided, yes.
All right, do we have any more questions for Mr. Gearhart? All right, moving on. Reports from Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Daniel Mannix.
Yeah, I'm going to be fast on this report, and we'll go more in depth on the budget process and all subsequent meetings up until we approve the budget. But it's been really nice working with Jen Parliament and Jen Stahl. We are right now looking at another massive increase in health insurance, 14%, which is going to put us about a 40% increase in about a year and a half in health insurance, which is really hard for anybody, for any school district to handle. We may be able to handle that. We may be coming to you saying we're going to be able to meet that expenditure, that hefty expenditure, with no impact to our programming and to our staff. I feel like that's kind of I felt like last year we pulled the rabbit out of the hat. We've been fortunate with a lot of different grants and a lot of different things we've done with special education. I shouldn't point one thing out that we've done because there's like 5 or 6 things. But one example is special education. We wrote a waiver to the state that allows a lot more revenue to come into the district, which certainly happens at a right time when a lot more revenue, a lot more expenditures are going out of the district. So good news is, at the next meeting, we'll go through our multi-year budget. It's done right now. We just, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go over that. We have our multi-year budget. We're in good shape from a multi-year standpoint. I feel pretty confident. Jen feels pretty confident that our tax cap is in line. Jen's going to go over that with you in just a second. In our community will support it. And we feel that with what the governor's run has given us right now, and that all the things we know, which is just about everything right now, just about, we're going to be okay this year. With that, any questions? Without, I'm just going to hand it off to Jen.
Don't take my job.
Sorry.
I am proud to introduce Business Manager Jennifer Parliament.
Thank you. I am just going to go over the tax cap briefly. Right now we're at, and this is final. We'll actually submit this on March 1st. It's at 2.25%, which is a really good place to be. So that means, what it means in dollars and cents is we can increase our budget by $466,000. So as of right now, we've been working on the budget for several weeks, and it looks like we will be able to stay underneath that tax cap. So no supermajority needed. I mean, we're still not done, but we are getting close to being done with the figures. We'll go over a detailed budget. But this will be submitted as of March 1st. So 2.25% is your tax cap.
I did want to real quick mention that because I mentioned it before. Originally, with the Democratic legislature kind of shifting, we thought that was going to be good news for education. And the governor came out and said he's $2.5 billion in the hole because tax revenues fell short. But then magically, in about another month after that, they said, well, we're really not 2.5 billion, excuse me. They're like 900 million. So things are shifting and bouncing back out. So it's not as dire. It's not as good as it looked at one point. It's not as dire as it looked just recently.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'm super excited to introduce ex officio student board member Cameron Kruger.
Super excited. Wow.
Super.
It's been a couple days since I've been here.
I know, we've missed you.
So over at Cumberland Head, on February 14th, they held the annual Eagle Pride Celebration Day. The theme of this year's was Cupid's Kindness Day. Students were involved in fun stations throughout the day, and there was a dance party, Cupid arrow game, Valentine making station, and other Valentine-related games. Just a fun holiday spirit for the kids to have. Love on a Leash continues to go to the school, and it's very popular with the students. The kids always look forward to reading to these cute and cuddly, calming dogs. Students were able to experience their first mindfulness and movement training with Shannon Pitcher-Bouye. Is it just Bouye? Yeah, she's a certified mindfulness coach, sharing her experiences with the students, her expertise, and staff. At the February's faculty meeting, Mrs. Stoutinger presented restorative practices resources and activities for teachers to use in the classroom. Restorative practices help to build character traits needed for sustaining positive relationships, student to student, and student to teacher, and teacher to student. The staff as a whole are adopting this approach as a way to improve the school community and classroom behavior. The new intervention programs are being piloted by special education teachers and interventionalists. Corrective reading and reading mastery are both being implemented for the remainder of the school year. These programs give more options to use for use of intervention with students. Trooper Fleischman, is it just Fleischman? That's a different name. We'll be visiting the 4th and the 5th graders to talk about online safety. She'll be discussing how to be safe in several areas and warning students about dangers of the online gaming with strangers and probably also social media. Plattsburgh State students are completing student teaching assignments with the CHES teachers. Cumberland Head teachers are always willing to take on student teachers, making a strong partnership with the college community. At Beekmantown Elementary School, everything is well. They had a ventriloquist come for the children. The Big Change Roundup started today, I believe, and they have a goal of $2,000. All the money they raise from the coins will go towards Vermont's Children's Hospital. And they had their winter kickoff, which is basically a fun day with a bouncy house, as I'm told. In the middle school, over 100 students were selected to have their 100-word story published in the New York edition of Young Writer's Book. Middle school spelling bee grade level winners are advancing to the regional spelling bees, which will be held on March 4th at Osable Valley High School. The PBL Update Team Summit completed the Rube Goldberg Machine Project in Team Ascent presentation. They presented their prototypes of their solution to the trash problem on Mount Everest to an expert panel made up of their peers. Eagle Pride Assembly was held on February 15th to celebrate the second quarter student achievements. On the past 15th, Mr. King presented a lesson on the importance of being an upstander instead of a bystander when it comes to bullying in each grade level. A bullying survey was administered on this day as well. The Robotics Club will be headed to compete in the first LEGO League competition at Clarkson University on March 9th. There are 29 students involved in the 6 to 8 in this club.
Grade 6.
Oh, okay. 8th grade students will be attending a field trip to CV Tech on March 12th. In the high school, everybody has been pulling through and coping with the loss of a student as well as a well-liked friend. There have been a lot of positive educational behavior and extracurricular events that have been conducted since the last Board of Education meeting. Students have attended college campuses of Paul Smith's and North Country College. The technological department had Norsk, a titanium rapid plasma manufacturing company, come to campus to inspire students to choose a career field centered around courses that we offer here at Beekmantown High School. The counseling department is working with students to help set up job shadowing opportunities and also providing support with social emotional learning for students during Counseling Corner each week. Counselors are pushing into classrooms this week to review graduation requirements and also start the course selection process for next year's school year to provide additional counseling support. The high school is developing a course awareness week in March to spark student interest in all the wonderful college and career courses we offer. The elementary, middle, and high school have met with Brilliant Pathways to discuss the implementation of the Gear Up grant, which would provide added awareness around college and career readiness. The ELA and World Language departments are working together with our high school principal to establish the seal of the biliteracy program for our students excelling in the ELA and World Languages. That'll especially help them when they move on to college to have that seal. High school has met with Clinton Community College to start a partnership with them and discuss many ways to integrate their mobile FAB lab to aid in student development around marketable career skills and readiness. The Champlain Valley Beekeepers Association has provided our Ag Department and FFA a $1,000 grant. This will cover all startup equipment for the creation of beekeeping, providing added career readiness within our ag program. Not only will this help provide more readiness for this career and more experience, we can also sell and generate wax, combs, honey, lip balm, lotions for our local farmer markets in Plattsburgh and other local cities. The high school is working closely with Clinton Community College to also increase student enrollment in our CAP courses that we do provide here. The high school is implementing a reading pilot program that will provide struggling readers with added support in obtaining grade level reading proficiency. The high school is in the process of implementing a college forensics course through Syracuse University to enable additional pathways to college readiness and college coursework. And then the January Regents Week last month was a great success. The faculty hosted several Regent reviews, kind of like a boot camp for students. Most students were retaking the Regents assessments this past January, and 82% of the students obtained proficiency. And that's pretty much it. I would also include the Harvard Model UN, but we already discussed that. It was quite the time.
Well, thank you. It's one of the best parts of the meeting. All right. Moving on, we need to do committee reports. Audit committee is first. I'm reporting on our January 24th, 2019 meeting. Audit committee reviewed and discussed our December 2018 financial reports. Excuse me. For December, meals served were up from the prior year. Breakfast was up by approximately 300. Lunch was up by 259. However, year to year, we are slightly down. And what I really found interesting is when we, this equates to an average daily serving of 1,291 breakfasts and 1,428 lunches, which is one of the best things I think we can do for our students is to make sure they're fed. And we're doing an outstanding job on that. Next is Treasurer Strahl briefed the committee on changes in our energy charges, like lower electric costs, higher propane costs, due to upgrades made during our EPC project, and we'll be analyzing those changes more as time goes on. Sorry. The questions that Mr. Mayor and I discussed during audit committee were mostly on the capital project payments and New York State electric and gas parking lot lights. And our next meeting is March 20th at 7:45 a.m. All right.
We had one this morning. We had one
We
this
did
morning.
have one this morning, but we were not ready with the minutes for that one. Mr. Beebe has been kind enough to offer to fill in for Ed Marin. So next is our policy committee.
So we had our policy committee meeting on February 5th, and we went through 6 policies. 5 of them are on our agenda, which is section 10. So I'm not going to bore you with the details. There wasn't really all that many changes. The biggest one was on 5208, which is basically the extracurricular activities regulations. Just included some social media, a couple, if a kid gets in a little bit of academic ineligibility, we're going to provide like a little status report to make sure that he's on track to get it back. And also on the violations, we're going to basically reset the clock. So if you get your 3 strikes against you in 7th and 8th grade, we're going to reset that so you're not, those 3 strikes don't follow you through the rest of your 4 years. Obviously, everybody knows whether you play sports, band, do whatever, UN, those extracurricular activities mean a lot to kids. So you make a couple bad decisions in 8th grade, we don't want that to affect you for the next 4 years of your high school career. The one policy that is not on the agenda is 5300, which is the Code of Conduct. That's pretty big policy, and we, in the fall, I believe, Mr. Mannix, or was it in the summer, we tasked out to Cumberland Head, the elementary, middle, and high school to get a committee together as to take a look at what our current code of conduct is, get a panel of students, parents, administrators, teachers, and go through what you like, what you don't like, what changes you think should be made, that sort of deal. So Cumberland Head in elementary school didn't really have too many changes, but the middle school and high school, along with the standard NISBA recommendations, have all been provided back to this committee. And obviously there's a couple sizable things that we want to go through, so we actually haven't made any recommendations to that code of conduct, or any revisions, I should say. But myself, Mr. Connors, and Mr. Marin, along with Mr. Mannix, Mr. Bazzaio was with that meeting. Somebody else was in that meeting? Can't remember.
You said it.
Yeah, Ed.
That's it.
We're going to go through those recommendations that the student, faculty, administrators had, and then we're going to put something a little more concrete together, so we have a more working document. But that's in the works right now.
In the work the committees did at the elementary school, they felt like, I think, and they don't speak for themselves when they show up to the committee meeting when we ask them to. They felt that they didn't need to really impact the code of conduct as much as they needed to impact their handbook. So they're going to have some changes within their elementary handbooks, but not necessarily within the district code of conduct. I think I have that right. Yeah. So, and they're ready to bring those changes, just to let the committee know the work they did.
And that's about it. If anybody wants to read those, obviously that's in section 10 of today's agenda. You're more than welcome to, everything's highlighted for you to make it easy.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on. It's resolved that the superintendent of schools recommends to the Board of Education to approve the following minutes.
This is a rare discussion item, so I just wanted
Yes.
in order to do it.
Right. No, I have notes on that. Okay. So I need a motion, please.
I'll motion.
All right. A second.
Second.
All right, and now we need to have discussion.
Yeah, I guess I'll just tee it up, and then you guys can discuss. Folks can discuss. We have the audio on the board website that has everything that happened in the last Board of Education meeting, or the meeting of, I think it's January 8th, that happens right up until the gavel gets hit. And we didn't include anything past the gavel, and the thought process was, we don't really include things that happen before the meeting, even though you can turn the mics on before the meeting. It really didn't happen after the meeting, though, because the meeting was in recess while we were moving to executive session. But there was some commotion. You may remember some of that commotion. There was some commotion that was captured on the audio, and we're like, well, that doesn't really fit the meeting. But on our transcribed minutes, we do have what happened after the meeting, so they are documented right now on the draft minutes. So the real question is, does the board want to include what happened after? We should just be consistent, right? Do we want to include everything that happened after the gavel hit, or do we want to just go up until the point where the gavel hit? It was for the record of what happened during the board meeting. Do you follow me? Did I explain that well enough or not? Am I confusing you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would suggest that due to the nature of some of the comments, it would be better not to include those, simply because those could be harmful to certain individuals.
Okay. So under your proposal, you would propose for those minutes, draft amending the minutes and only putting in the written minutes and in the audio of the minutes up until the point where you close out the meeting by hitting the gavel. Would that be correct?
Yep.
The events happening after the gavel is hit are still documented, and we have proceeded with dealing with those events.
That's accurate.
But to include them for years down the road review, if we exclude them from the minutes tonight, we wouldn't have those to go back to, or people in the public wouldn't have those.
They wouldn't have those. They wouldn't have those minutes. There may or may not be, depending on how disposable things are, in different courts or wherever, other records like you mentioned. But yeah, they wouldn't have. There would be no record memorialized in our minutes of what happened right after that meeting. I'm only stating that. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that you're right.
I guess what I'm saying is we have dealt with what happened after the gavel fell, and I don't feel the need to keep that as part of our permanent record within the minutes. We have other documents that address that.
So you like the procedure that we kind of outlined when Mr. Connors was on?
I agree, it's fine. There's a form, there's a document we have now pointing to those remarks.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody's good, we can just amend the written minutes to parallel the audio minutes, and those would be the official minutes adopted tonight by the Board of Education. And Joanne would make the one edit to the written minutes tomorrow and post those as the adopted board minutes.
Is there anyone here that feels that the written minutes need to stay as they are? Okay. All right. All right. So do we need to amend this resolution in any way?
And so resolve that the superintendent of schools recommend the Board of Education approve the following minutes. Yeah, the 1/8/19, we would put amended written minutes, but we would maintain the unamended audio recording. And the rest would be good.
Okay.
Just as a point of order,
Okay.
picking up the book that we were all given earlier on the Robert's Rules in Plain English with respect to writing minutes. It indicates that you should record all adopted and lost or defeated motions, name of the maker of the motion, name of the members reporting, name of all those elected or appointed, name of votes on each side in the ballot. Don't record discussion or personal opinion, name of seconder, motion withdrawn, entire reports. Just kind of makes you think, just to the point of what you're doing. The minutes are a reflection of what occurred at the formal meeting, and I think what you're talking about that was captured on the draft written minutes, but not in the audio, was not part of that meeting. It was sort of extraneous, conversation afterwards.
Yeah, there was some discussion in our office about when does the meeting really end? Was it after everything's adjourned? We agree with what the board's decision is.
Yeah.
That was just where the confusion kind of came.
Yeah, no, it sounded like this kind of parallel or added support to what you're doing.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
All right. So the resolutions is acceptable as read, with knowing that we are going to amend the written minutes of January 8th, 2019. All right, we have our motion by Mike, our second by Jeremy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Noes? Abstains? Resolution passes. All right. It's resolved that the superintendent of schools recommends to the Board of Education to approve the CSE, CPSE, and 504 recommendations of February 12th, 2019, February 26th of 2019. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
I'll second.
Oh, we got one from Mark. Next time. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask. Anybody have any discussion or questions? All right, we'll try again. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Noes? Abstains? Resolution passes. Moving on to personnel. It's resolved that the superintendent of schools recommends to the Board of Education that the following personnel resolutions on this consent agenda, resignations, appointments, and retirements be and are hereby approved. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
I'll second.
Any question or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Noes? Abstains? Resolution passes. Before I read this resolution, is this a possible move to the list?
Yes.
Yes.
definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a cold and I'm running out of air.
Yes.
So at any moment, if anyone wants to say move the list, it is an appropriate time to use that command. All right, resolution of the Board of Education of the Beekmantown Central
Move
School
the
District.
list.
Thank you. Just so you guys know, the resolution is massive. Okay,
You're just moving that resolution.
Move the resolution.
just moving the resolution forward.
Okay, Mike?
That motion.
Okay.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion?
Can I give you a little background quick on this? This is a resolution, CVS approved a capital project. We have to have this resolution approved by March 1st in order to pay our debt. And we've been working closely with Jen Fulham and I, who are building a plan to pay the $4-point-something million, which we're going to owe over the next 15 years to pay for their $30 million capital project. This list is required, and it helps us do that effectively and allows us to get BOCES aid back on that money. Okay. Any
Great.
questions?
Any other questions? All right, Joanne, may I please have a roll call vote?
Douglas Beebe?
Yes.
Kathy Buckley?
Yes.
Jeremy Connors?
Yes.
Michael Hagedorn?
Yes.
Holden Lehman?
Yes.
Ed Marin? Mark Sam?
Yes.
Colleen Stone?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. It's resolved that the superintendent of schools recommends to the Board of Education to approve the Beekmantown Central School District Supervisory Organizational Chart dated 2/5/2019. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Mike? Any questions or discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Noes? Abstains? Resolution passes.
Okay, this is a busy agenda, and this is abnormal, but this was on our agenda on Friday, and over the weekend, late on Saturday, I received a communication which I forwarded to the board from the council for the town of Plattsburgh. And they now want to be in charge of seeker, and this is for the land that the city wants to. The city has bought the land from the town, and they want to annex it. The city wants to be in charge of seeker, and the town is saying, no, we want to be in charge of seeker. And what's really before us is, do we want to be in charge of seeker? So we may want to. I would tell you that we do not want to be in charge of seeker, but I don't know that we want to take a stance on who ends up being in charge of seeker. Like the town, this is the town city issue. Before, when nobody had notified us that it seemed like everybody was fine with the city being that, this resolution allows the city to be in charge of seeker. But now, because of the late notice, I feel like if we approve what was on the agenda,
Right.
the town could be like, they're siding with the city. We're really not. It was just the only entity that up until the other day said they wanted it.
All right, so if we are not necessarily, because of that late information, prepared to make this decision, may we table it?
We could table this, and I could. I don't know that we need a resolution. We can ask council later on. we could come back and, or we could write them, and that we could write a letter to each entity saying, we have no interest in being the lead seeker agency, and we will defer to the two entities that want it to work it out and become, you know, and if that happens to be through the court of law, so be it. But we don't have an interest in being that agency, and allow them to just move forward the way they want to move forward. Would you guys be fine with that? So we basically table this until we ever need it again.
Right. All right, Joanne, how do we properly table this?
Motion to table. Motion to table. What's the motion to table?
I'm making a motion to table
Seeking motion.
the seeker resolution.
Seeking motion. You're seeking motion.
Okay.
Yeah. Seeking
All right.
a motion to
All right.
for the seeker.
All right. All right. So we have a motion. We have a motion by Mike. I need
I'll
a second,
second.
please. Jeremy. All right. Any questions, discussion concerning this table? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Noes? Abstains? Resolution to table passes.
Great.
All right. Next is policy. It's resolved that the superintendent of schools recommends to the Board of Education to approve the following policies. May I have a motion, please?
I'll motion.
Go. Second?
I'll second.
Holden? All right. Questions or discussion? I want to bring to attention that we're going to do a minor change, and it is very minor, on policy 2150. Under number 3, the policy originally came forward. It states, if there are still no viable candidates after completing steps 1 and 2, the board may, at its discretion, hold special election. Being that they have reorganized our policy, we do not have a step 1 and step 2 anymore. So how it will read is, if there are still no viable candidates, the board may, at its discretion, hold a special election.
Can I also make a comment here?
Yeah.
So particularly in this one, because it was brought up earlier,
Yeah.
the question of, was this revised because we felt we did this wrong? And I think it's worth noting that we revised this not because we felt we did it wrong, but because we believed we did it correctly, but we wanted to ensure that there was never a question such as was brought forward by Mr. Brockway. So this was a way to prevent such an action from occurring in the future.
Right. And the judge affirmed that we followed policy correctly, and so I think it's really good that we're not afraid to tweak and improve our policies regardless of the timing. I'm sorry it was perceived that as an attempt to manipulate, but it is truly an attempt to get better, improve our policies and the quality of them. So thank you for saying that. Any other questions or discussion?
I think it feels rushed, and I heard his comment, and I think he'll be back. And I think he may apply for Andy's position. I signed his petition to run. I think he's very outspoken, and we look forward to working with someone like that in debate. Hindsight is 2020. He was a finalist that wasn't interviewed, and you brought to my attention because I called you and Mr. Mayor that there was actually 2 that weren't interviewed because they couldn't make the date. I just didn't. Hindsight is 2020, and that's my comment. It was used 3 times since I've been on the board. Once for myself. I think it worked properly. This time it was questioned and called into court, and I think it may be challenged at the state. And the state may have to say. I don't know how that will play out, but we'll see. And my vote would be to table it and wait for the state, but we can vote, and that's fine.
Given his comment, do we do from here? Is his comment just a comment, or does he have to make a motion?
If he wants to table it, he'd have to make a motion.
So it's up to you. You would have to make a motion, and we'll see a second.
Or it could be just part of the discussion.
Or it could be just part of the
Does
discussion.
anyone have anything else to add to my discussion? I kind of went off of what Jeremy said. And I'm looking at Doug with the legal decision that was just issued. So it was, you guys met in February. I don't know when the issue was settled, if it lined up or why this was chosen. Like you said, we don't want to be tripped up again.
Why what was chosen?
Why this policy was chosen.
Why this policy was
Well, to
chosen?
Mr. Berman's comment,
Oh.
it was just updated 2 years ago. It was used when I was appointed.
It was used when Doug was appointed. Well, no, Doug applied, and it wasn't me. Mr. Connors was appointed.
Yeah,
but-
we've had a bunch of them.
Yeah, we've had a few. Can I chime in?
Sure.
One of the reasons why I was advice of council was when the board adopted that policy, and it was hard to find people that interested in running, and the board was trying to be creative to try to find new ways to find interested people, and it worked. It worked. It was nice, but there was some procedures in there when you had a lot of people. What was determined was fine, obviously by the courts, but some people thought it wasn't fine, and one of them was here tonight. A legal opinion was given to us saying, not a formal legal opinion, but they said, why did the board give away their statutory right in the first place? You have the right to appoint somebody. You don't have that now in policy, so now you do have that back in policy. That's one particular reason. You still can interview people, but let's make it less bureaucratic, so there's less way for somebody to challenge it in the future. I think those are the main reasons why. I think the board still has the right to investigate who's interested and seek their interest and interview them the way they see fit. But they also have the right to say, hey, this is only for 2 months. We're going to appoint that person, and that's a right that's been given to them by law. And under our policy, they took that away.
Right. Our policy we tried to make our policy supersede law. And with that, and interpretation of language, candidate versus applicant, things like that, it created a lot of chaos. It was also brought to our attention that our policy was unique to our district and not consistent with other districts.
And there's one more thing here that's really important is it's been noted that there were harassment complaints by board members against board members, and it was stated in defense of the behavior towards the particular board member that it was all just political. And when I hear that, I understand what that means is if I can push that person off the board, I may be able to have this person join the board. And if I could push another person off the board, I may be able to have this person on the board by manipulating a process. And that was stated, and that's just a scary thing because you're driving, somebody's using a process to manipulate their own political agenda in a school district. So that was kind of pretty concerning to a lot of people here, and that's one other reason why it was taking away that ability to hide underneath that blanket of that process. I think that's accurate.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Mark, when you have a vacancy, the law says, the board has the authority to appoint anybody else. Your policy restricts you from doing that.
Well, it's written down.
This amendment gives essentially back the authority. And I mean, I could probably make a decent legal argument that the law says you have that authority. Your policy can't supersede law. So if you just made an appointment without following your policy, there's probably a good argument to be made that you follow the law and that's all you need to do. But what was at least challenged in that decision, what was challenged was you didn't follow your policy. This just reinserts back into your policy what the law gave you in the first place. So I've had this happen in a district where we had a vacancy occur in April, and the board simply wanted to appoint someone, or it wasn't April, it was, the vacancy would have expired, like it would have had, the 90-day period that you would have to appoint by would have ended shortly before the May election. So to go through a very arduous process to effectively appoint someone for 90 days seems overly burdensome. It'd be easier to just slot someone in there knowing you got to run in May. So.
I think we have that situation right now.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, you do. You actually do have that situation. Now that I think about it, you do. So, you know, your process is very well articulated in your policy. Adding this language gives you the option of saying, you know, given the short period of time that person will be in the seat before they need to run, maybe it's most prudent to just say it's going to be Miss X, Mr. Y, whatever.
If you look at the language that's stricken, it's that if you receive 20 votes, right now if you receive 20 votes, you can be the next person on the board when somebody drops out. And what people were worried about is, okay, so this upcoming election, if I can have a few other people receive 20 votes, then I can stalk people, attack people on Facebook, tell things about people that are untrue, make their life miserable, attack their business, get them off the board. That person can then take over. Think about that, because is that a possibility around here? That was one of the reasons why that language was advised to us, to say, let's not put 20 votes as a mechanism to let somebody take over on a board seat.
I would, from what I'm hearing, I feel better now that appropriate thought's been put into revising this policy. So I have a question as well as a comment, but Mark, if you felt like you needed more time to discuss it and think about it, I would support you in tabling to the next meeting unless we were intending to fill a seat between now and May, or now and next.
We have to do.
What's that?
We have to fill the seat.
We can't wait till.
No, it's too long.
It's the
Within 90 days, or the district superintendent of the BOCES has to fill it.
Right. So, I mean, if you count the 90 days from January 30th, that ends before our election.
Could we do this next meeting?
Yeah, we could do this next meeting.
Perhaps just like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, which is in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, Mark, I would support you, and if we wanted a little more time to think about it until next meeting. That's fine. If that's what you want to do.
So if you want to table it, then you need to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to table.
Okay. I'll second.
Is that, do we have to make a motion to table just this policy? Or does that affect all policies?
Yeah. You'd want to be specific.
Okay.
And if you want to bring the issue back up in the next meeting with certainty, you can say that too, although I don't know if that would necessarily bind you to do so.
Okay. All right. So.
Do we have discussion on that?
Yep.
I think that is a waste of time. We just went through that in the court of Plattsburgh, and that judge just said we did everything right. A waste of time again.
Doug, I don't see any problem with putting this on the next
I just think
agenda.
it's a waste of time. It's just my point.
Okay.
We just settled that issue.
We settled the issue with how we...
We just settled, part of the lawsuit, Mike, was how Jeremy got on the board.
Exactly, but we're talking about going forward and changing our policy. And if one of our board members feels like, well, I didn't know about this till recently and I just want a little more time to talk about it, I think waiting 2 weeks is not a lot to ask. And me personally, we'll see it on the next agenda and say, yep, yes or no. Or, I mean, it's not like we're going to call a special meeting to review this policy. We're just giving Mark more time.
I just think it's a waste of time. Just my discussion points.
I listened to the public comment and I heard his concern. And he'll be back. Like, that's his promise.
Right,
That's his right.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed that he left before he could actually hear the court ruling on it. I think it would have been important for him to hear.
So it kind of shows how serious he really was about his comment. If he just left, you know?
Well, he had a basketball game.
And he'll have the option to run coming up shortly, right?
Yeah.
So.
Great.
So we have, do we vote on the option to table first? Is that procedurally? I'm in foreign territory here.
So was there a motion to move all the policies? No, there wasn't.
I originally read that
Second, we're in discussion.
On the policy.
Yeah, and then there was a motion, a second to table one of the policies.
And we started discussion.
Discussion on that motion.
Right. So is that an amendment to the first motion to?
Yes.
I think it's probably what that is. Your motion is probably to amend the first motion to remove, to table the 2150 policy for the. Yeah, that's probably what it probably should be recorded as.
Competing motions. So why don't we do it that way? Why don't we have one motion? Let's see how, I'm just trying to move through this, okay?
Yep.
We have one motion to move the list of policies as brought forward by the policy committee. And we have another motion to move forward all of the list except for to table 2150. And if you could note it, like Doug said, and bring that definitely for discussion at the next meeting. So those are two competing motions out there. Does that sound like something we can do, Joanne?
No. No, you don't want two competing motions. You really want a motion.
Forget what I said.
Well, then it just begs the question of which one do you vote on first, and they contradict one another, so it doesn't really.
Do you have to vote on the motion that was put before the board first then? Because we can't do competing motions, that's where we are.
Right.
So we have to vote on the one motion was made. And we don't have, Robert's Rules of Order are a guide here.
I know, I'm using my guide, yeah, I'm using my guide.
All right.
So can we just step back from the motion and allow his motion forward?
I don't know.
No, I don't think so, because we have a first and a second.
Is there anything about voting on the most disruptive motion first?
That's
That's usually how we do it in parliamentary procedures at MUN.
This is perfect practice for you.
Well, this is just like continuing my experience.
I think you're not going to be able to vote on the first motion without considering Mark's proposed amendment to table 2150, because if you vote on the first motion in the entirety, that results in all the board policies being up for a vote, and if they pass, it moots the second motion.
Right.
Which I suppose you could do. I think that.
So you're basically agreeing with Cameron saying
you're voting on the most disruptive first.
It's disrupting the original motion. So you'd vote on moving the list.
Amending.
I think that ultimately synthesizes what that's what you're talking about. You're moving the list with the provision that 2150 be tabled. If that does not pass, then I think you bring back the motion to pass them all at once.
Yeah.
That sounds like the clearest way to make that happen.
All right.
Put my guidebook down too.
All right, the motion's not just to table one policy.
It's to move all the other policies.
One, right?
Move all the policies and table 2150 until the next meeting. That's the discussion. That's in front of us. It seems like.
Question.
Pass and go back to
Question. Just to make clarification, so everybody understands. If it fails, do we read the original resolution?
I think so.
That's what I just muttered to myself.
Yes.
And it sounded
Okay.
right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you need 5 votes to pass.
You need 5 votes to pass.
The amended.
The table, either one, whatever.
Yeah, either one.
motion.
Either one.
5 votes.
Yeah. Well, they all get tabled.
All right, Pauline, we were kind of talking quiet. Did you catch any of that?
Well, I'm just listening to the different views.
Okay. All right. So,
I think apparently it looks like there's some misunderstanding, from the public. And since there is another vacancy open, that something should be done. To make it clearer and to decide what we're going to do.
right. So what we're going to do is approve or disapprove a resolution that includes all, with the exception of policy 2150. If that fails, then we approve or disapprove the original resolution.
That sounds right.
Sounds right.
Okay.
Sounds all right to everybody else? I'm just one person.
All right, so we'll do, please chime in if I do anything wrong
We
here.
already have the motion.
It's already out there.
Yeah.
Motion
Motion's on the
second.
table. Just have to vote. Mark Zan, Michael Hagedorn.
Right. So,
Okay,
Joanne's got it.
You got it.
okay.
You want a roll call just to...
Kathy, we're gonna roll call, okay?
Are you asking me for a roll call?
We're gonna roll call.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so the motion is to move the policies except table policy 2150. The motion is by Mark Zan, seconded by Michael Hagedorn. Douglas Beebe,
No.
Kathy Buckley,
No.
Jeremy Connors,
Yes.
Michael Hagedorn,
Yes.
Holden Lehman,
No.
and Mark Zan,
Yes.
Pauline Stone.
Yes.
Okay.
The motion failed.
Your motion failed.
Motion failed.
The motion failed, and only had 4 votes. It was 4-3.
So the motion failed.
So
So
now the
now
vote-
in front of the board is you're gonna move the policies forward.
So we're going to do the original resolution.
The original resolution.
Do we know, we should review, and I'm so sorry that normally our
No.
board meetings are,
No, I'm sorry.
No,
No, no,
don't
no,
be
it's
sorry.
sorry.
No,
No,
not
I'm
at all.
sorry. These are
We're
just
learning.
the mechanics of the meeting. The mechanics of the meetings are a little clunky right now.
This is a teachable moment.
It's a teachable moment. So if this one fails, we have to know how do you bring forward a failed agenda item? Because I don't think it's as simple as just having it show back up on the next agenda. So I was wondering if you wanted to open up
That guidebook?
plain English version of the word. Joanne, do you have, I know you've got a training on this and you're really well versed. If this motion fails, does Brockboard, or is it just, are the mechanics that the same people can't first and second the next motion?
We can...
Or I think it might be that somebody who dissents has to bring forward the next
Do
motion.
we need to know that today?
Well, I think the board should know that how easy is it going to be to bring these policies forward in the future. It may not be as simple as, I'm not saying with precision, as simple as it failed, they can show back up at the next agenda.
I'm gonna guess this is not gonna be delineated in the abbreviated version. I don't know. I'm not gonna pretend to opine on. I don't know the answer. If there's a
Something in the back of my mind is saying is that you have a failed agenda item.
Cameron, what do you guys do?
Yeah, Cameron, failed agenda item.
Are you talking about the second motion that we still have to vote?
Yeah.
Yes.
if that fails, is there a rule with respect to how it can be brought back in a subsequent meeting?
Correct.
Or separated,
What's that?
right? Or separated for the next meeting.
It may, yeah.
That's what we're looking to do. He's
No,
looking
no, that one's failed. The separation
Oh,
is
okay.
failed.
That's what I'm trying to do.
So now, what I just don't want to have happen is this next one fail
Because of the one item.
because we don't have votes, and then we are struggling to try to get all of these policies. Because now in front of the board, it's all or nothing. And would people respect that? I mean, sorry, I'll be quiet on that. I just want to make sure procedurally we know what happens if it fails.
Hey Cameron, you look tired. You know, even though we are using you as a resource, if you are tired, you need to go.
You know what I think you might be referring to is that once a matter has been decided, and I'm just
Yep.
Using my little guidebook here,
Yep.
it can't be brought up at the same meeting.
Okay.
What's it gonna take from, right?
Members have the right to rethink a situation if they feel the decision has been made too quickly or without enough information. But I think it may be with respect to being at the same meeting.
Well, then let's go with the mindset that this is now in front of the board is, are they going to adopt the list of policies to move forward immediately?
All right, reread the resolution.
We already have a motion. We have
Okay.
a motion by Doug Beebe, second by Holden Lehman.
Okay.
We'll roll call it out. To leave it as it is. Doug Beebe,
Yes.
Kathy Buckley,
Yes.
Jeremy Connors,
Yes.
Michael Hagedorn,
Yes.
Holden Lehman,
Yes.
Mark Stan,
No.
Colleen Stone.
Yes.
It passed.
All right, resolution passes. It's resolved that the superintendent of schools recommends to the Board of Education that the following resolution on this consent agenda, financial reports, donation, and bid awards be and are hereby approved. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Jeremy? Second?
I'll second.
Mike?
Okay. So now that this is on the table, we have Garrett Hamlin from Tetra Tech has driven this way, and he's going to give everybody an update on the bid awards before help you with your discussion and your deliberation. Thank you for coming. Sorry about the wait.
Hello.
Yes.
Ready? I think I want to start by acknowledging the challenge that it is to be a board member, and to thank you all for your service. I'm an outsider, but it looks hard. I'm here to bring some good news to the conversation, because I'm going to tell a story that starts out with some challenges and it has a happy ending. And the story starts in the spring when we did this project, this capital project, and we were all disappointed to see how over budget the project was. And we know that it was slow to the bid market because of FTE. We know that it's a broad bid market. We know that there were some substantial challenges with the estimate provided by the former CM. A lot of reasons for all of that. So we were able to recommend a site contractor award. You have the benefit of a new parking system out front, traffic safety system out front, and that contractor will be doing the site work for the fields coming this year. Turn this on for you. Great. Thanks. It's on. You good? Okay. Are we here?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
perfect.
better. You might want to tilt it up.
Good. Actually, you know what? I could do this. So the site contractor will be providing site work in the fields this coming year. That's already under contract. So over the summer, we rescoped the project. There were a number of items that the district elected to be able to do themselves in various fashion. Some items were deferred, and some needs changed, actually. So it became clear that there were some things that would be better done in other ways. And in the process of doing that, the district did an RFP process, or informal RFP process for new CM. We hired a new CM. And we've been working closely with them to, they did an estimate of key portions of the project at a very important point for us in this redesign and rebid process. We finished the documents as a result of that, and they did a full estimate before it went out to bid. So we were able to come into February with confidence that we were going to be okay on bid day. And it's always risky when you're bidding a project, because there's a lot of things that are out of our control. But I'm happy to report that we have received multiple bids for all trades. I'm going to go through that a little bit tonight for you. And we are under budget. So,
Magic words.
Amen. I'd also say, and we'll talk a little bit about this tonight, we asked for base bid pricing from the contractors, and then we asked for some alternates, because we were all nervous going into this bid that we didn't want to be in a situation where it was not awardable. And so we pulled out chunks of the project and asked the contractors to give us separate pricing for that, to give the board latitude of awarding various pieces of the project. Not only were we able to recommend award of base bid, but we're also in a position to be able to recommend award of all the alternates as well. So there were a number of things that, if we hadn't done so well on bid day this past, or earlier this month, that the project wouldn't have been able to afford, but we're in a position where it's going to be able to afford all of that. So this is really terrific news all around. And what I'd like to do is just take a minute, run through some numbers with you. I think in your board packet you have a document that says Phase 3 Budget Summary, February 21st. At the top of the page, it refers to the referendum amount, $18,025,300. And in the middle of the page, there's a yellow line that says $7,445,250. That was the amount that was available for us to be able to award for construction at this moment. Down below that, you see the summary of the low bidders, all their alternates. And you see that the total value for all of those added up is $6.7 million. And the number right below that is $741,861. That $740,000 is the unencumbered balance of this project. So we've set aside contingencies, construction contingencies, and you still have some money left over. So you're in a really good position at this point to be able to say, yes, let's award to these 4 contractors, base bids, and all alternates. So the alternates, I want to just run through them briefly. We broke it out in pretty good sized chunks, actually. So alternate number 1 is the secure vestibule at the Beekmantown Elementary School main vestibule. So it's the secure vestibule portion of that we've all seen over the years. Alternate number 2 was the canopy portion of that. So we had broken it into 2 sections. We said, if you can't afford the canopy, at least let's try and get the secure vestibule. That's alternate number 2 is the canopy. Number 3 was the auditorium and stage re-roofing at the main building. That's a section of roof that's really in need of replacement, serious need of replacement. And then the last, alternate number 4, was a chilled water rooftop unit at the main building in lieu of another kind of system. This is a much more user-friendly way to manage chilled water in a building, and it's something that will benefit the maintainability of the system over time.
Much more energy efficient, right?
A little bit more energy efficient, but mostly more maintenance efficient. You know, less moving parts is the way Rick Mandel described it to us. So that summarizes where we're at right now. There is a resolution in front of you tonight, I would assume, on the agenda at some point that would award all contracts and all alternates. We've vetted all the contractors working with UW Marks, the construction manager. We're confident that they understand the documents. They are believing that they are going to be successful. We've also looked at references to confirm that they're considered responsible contractors under the law. And we're recommending, really without any reservation, the set of contractors. Now, I'd like to think this is the end of the story and it's a happy story, but really this is the beginning of another big chunk of construction. And construction is always a challenge. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I didn't give birth, but I was there twice when my wife did, and the construction process is a lot like going into labor and delivery room. There are a lot of unknowns, there are a lot of challenges, and the goal is let's get out with a new baby. So here we go, buckle up, it's time for construction. Okay. The one other thing I want to just take a minute and do is give you some highlights of what's in this construction project. I just want to say it so that we all hear it, because it's really is great news. So the new cafeteria renovation at the Beekmantown Elementary School, the LGI, and the small group instruction rooms, they were sized down a little bit, but not significantly. There were some changes that we were able to make that make it much more cost effective without losing that space as it is. Some piping work, some second means of egress, and some classrooms and exits out of those. There's code safety improvements, fire alarm upgrades, a couple of classroom upgrades at the elementary school for ADA toilets, athletic field lighting, which is actually already awarded, some electric upgrades and power panels, HVAC at the cafeteria and administration suite in the Cumberland Head Elementary School, operable partition at the elementary school, some window replacements, water line supply to the bus garage, some doors at the bus garage, and smoke detection there as well. So what we're going to see this summer is going to be significant improvements to a number of areas in the district. So that's what I have for you tonight. Is there any questions? Anything you'd like me to answer?
I have a question.
Mr. Hagedorn.
Now, we get bids in for each of these things, and then you investigate a company, and I assume part of your job now is to say, you can't do it for this. What happens in that scenario? Do you discover sometimes they might have underbid themselves?
So you're going to sign a contract with these contractors, and they're required to give you what's in the plans and specs.
Yeah.
That's
But if you detect they made an error, you point it out to them, or they got to eat it?
they're required to give you what's in the plans and specs. So that's part of the process where we sat with them, go through the plans and specs to make sure that they have everything, at least at a high level, confirm that they're willing to stand by their bid.
Gary, at the meeting that you weren't at when we opened the bids, they had a couple of questions on a couple of the companies, and they went through. They kind of talked like Mike was just talking right there. They went through and they investigated it, and they vetted the company that they were able to do the work. So that certainly did come up, and Jim,
And
the
it
fire
happened
protector
afterwards
type,
too, in specific meetings to go through the scope of the project. Yeah. Do you have a question?
So obviously it's great that we're under budget, but I'm just wondering, was there a lot of competition for these bids? Or was it like our last one where we were so late that I'll just take it because that's my extra work? Or was there some serious competition for these bids?
That's a really good question. I'm glad you pointed that out because I wanted to mention that. So there's a document in your packet tonight that's we refer to it as the bid tab. So it goes through each trade and tells you what the bidders were. And we have at least 2 bids for every trade. 4 for electrical, I think, and 2 for all the others. So we're not in a situation where we've got a privateering contractor who knew they were the only sole bidder and they jacked up their price. And I did the math this afternoon just to double check. If you look at the difference between the low bid award, if you went to the second bidder in every category and you added that up, it would add about $900,000 to the project. So that to me says that we have a high level of confidence that you're getting what is market value for this work. It's higher than we'd all hoped it would be, but it's true. We truly believe it's market value. It was hard to get 2 bidders for every trade.
I would imagine.
I'll be quite frank about it. The construction manager did a good job. My staff was heavily involved in right down to the wire, making sure that we had 2 general contractors in particular, because there's a lot of work in the marketplace now, and it was good that we got multiple bids on all trades.
So our team there, locally, Mr. Scott really handles a lot of that for us. And then Garrett, Jim from Tetra Tech, and Phil from Tetra Tech have been tremendous assets for us. And the gentleman from UW Marks has been...
Jeff West.
Jeff West has been a tremendous upgrade. So we have it's a really strong team.
Yeah. I have a high level of confidence that we're going to be successful in construction.
Yeah.
It's always going to be challenging, but we have a team that's going to be able to do it. We have good contingencies built in for any surprises. There are going to be surprises. I would expect that you'll be able to choose some amenities along the line or have some other work that you might do in another project down the road as a result. The one other thing I want to add that I should have said earlier is that in that story I told of the last year, we did something that was very, very important, and we got some help from SED. So in today's world, we're all grumbling about how long it takes to get a project at SED and the bureaucracy and stuff like that. But I got to give SED a real vote of thanks and confidence, because in the design process we went to SED and said, we'd like to ask for some building aid on the addition. And they took our request seriously. It wasn't something that was planned for and calculated into the project from a financial standpoint. But because we were making the request and they took it seriously, and they had a lot of questions about it, right after the bid, they came along and gave a determination that they were actually going to increase the aid for the addition portion of the LGI, the large group construction fund. And that's a big benefit to this project, because it's bringing in real dollars to the project that would have been local share, and now they're actually SED dollars. So kudos to those guys for that.
Can I say to those who may not know, is if you're expanding your footprint, they normally don't, right?
If you're expanding your footprint in a situation where you do not have increasing enrollment,
yeah,
they have trouble gaining in that situation, and that's what we have here. You don't have the enrollment to drive a new addition on this building, but they saw the educational value, and that's really what drove the decision for them. Is that they asked, "What are you doing this for?" And when you make a case for what that LGI will do in this building educationally, they agreed. They liked it. Yeah. So, okay. I know you have a long agenda tonight, so I'll get out of your hair.
That last piece, though, that he's talking about is really important, because it allows this Board of Education to uphold the promises that previous boards of education made when they said, we're going to improve this project, but there's going to be no increased cost to the taxpayers because of this project. And that gives us cushion. Jen and I were working with fiscal advisors. We're going to hit that promise as well. So we're under bid, and we can hit that promise. So those are two big things. And we have all of our cornerstones in.
Yeah.
That's really good news.
It is. Yeah. I'm going very fast, so we got to get
all right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? We're good? All right. May I please have a roll call vote?
Douglas Beebe?
Yes.
Kathy Buckley?
Yes.
Jeremy Connors?
Yes.
Michael Hagedorn?
Yes.
Holden Lehman?
Yes.
Ed Marin? Mark Sand?
Yes.
Colleen Stone?
Yes.
Oh, if I can make one other comment, and it's on schedule.
Yeah, it's on schedule. That's on schedule.
That is a bonus.
Thank you. Drive safe.
All right, hold on. I'm flipping pages too fast. All right. Additional items to discuss? Board vacancy. So we need to replace Mr. Brockway's seat. I feel bad because we've already gone through this, but the 90 days brings us before our next election. So we're going to have to look for eligible board members or past board members to come forward and show an interest in our vacancy. So we had such a long discussion on that earlier. I don't really think there's a heck of a lot more to say, but we need to do it relatively quickly. Having an even number board is not a good choice. So we need to get back to having an odd number. So I guess we should have anyone who's interested in coming forward should contact the district office. Am I putting Joanne under undue pressure?
We could keep a very similar process.
Yep.
And the process would be, because I don't think the board always has, under this new policy, you're required to fill it within 90 days, and they're going to make every effort to follow the protocols, and you can choose the best candidate as determined by the board at any time, but you could ask for, give people 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever to send a letter in, like it has worked before, and then if you felt like you had the time still or whatever, you could interview whoever you wanted as outlined here by the policy, and make you definitely could get it done. It'd be difficult to have it done by the first meeting in March, but you could have it done by the second meeting in March. That person would have April, May, I think. And so we could probably still do an advertisement on Facebook, Twitter, Sun Community News, and we could probably, I don't know, I think we'll see some applicants.
We had 11 last time, so
Yeah.
I was thinking there is interest out there. I thought the last time it worked well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could we, didn't we at one point, rather than going through that whole process again, pick up where we left off since it was so recent, or no, we have to start fresh?
No,
I honestly think that you should allow everyone. I think we should start again. That's right.
You guys tell us what to do.
I guess what I'm thinking is I remember a time when we said, well, it's kind of like next up.
Right.
Well, we didn't have a vote then, so that changes things. But we had 11 candidates. We got Jeremy off that list. We could contact those 11 and say, do you want to, or just start fresh? Just throwing out. So we don't have to go through that whole process.
Either way, I think we're going to have to go through that process again.
You think you should go through the process again?
I think we ought to start fresh. The
Yeah.
five people that we interviewed, they were I would think like they would put their name back in. They were all pretty adamant and pretty passionate that they wanted to be on this board. So I would assume those 5, and I don't know the other 6 people. Honestly, I didn't know who they were. I did not know those people personally, but maybe they would. Hoping they would again.
I guess that would also inspire who's really interested to come out again.
Yeah, that's true. So I think we should start the process over, as long as everyone else is in agreement.
Do you want us to give 10 days to put a letter in? 10 days allows the board to know at the next meeting how many people you had interested, and then you can figure out one last step before that next meeting. Does that make sense to you guys? Everybody?
Right.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay. So we'll give 10 days starting tomorrow to have the letter of interest in. And then anytime we have one, we'll drop it in the portal and people can read it and know who the candidates are.
Excellent. All right. Step 1 of replacing board member seat. All right. We've set aside 10 minutes for public comment. Seeing that no one is here, I'm not going to torture you by reading the policy again. We do have an additional executive session, so we will be appointing a clerk pro tem. It's resolved that the Board of Education appoint a clerk pro tem.
We have one more item to read. I forgot about that.
Sorry.
Do the meeting, sorry.
All right. All right. Okay. It's resolved that the Board of Education, pursuant to the requirements of Title IX, Board Policy Number 0110 and Policy Regulation Number 0110-R, and after consultation with the Board's attorney, accept the recommendations and finding of the appointed substitute Title IX officer relative to a particular complaint, and further resolve that the Board of Education authorize the issuance of the proposed final outcome letter to the complainants and accused in the above referenced Title IX investigation, and further resolve that the Board of Education authorize the Board of Education's president, superintendent of schools, and their designees to enforce the terms of the proposed final outcome letters and of recommendations and finding of the appointed substitute Title IX officer as adopted. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Pauline. Any additional questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Abstains? Resolution passes. Just Joanne need that. All right, back to clerk pro tem. Do we have any volunteers for clerk pro tem this evening? All right, I'll do it. Okay, it's resolved that the Board of Education appoint Kathy Buckley as the clerk pro tem for this meeting. May I have a motion, please?
Motion. Second.
All right, we'll let Jeremy take the motion, and second? Mike. Any question or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Noes, abstains, resolution passes. It's resolved that the Board of Education enter executive session to discuss a collective negotiations. May I have a motion, please?
In a history of a particular person or persons.
And the history of a particular person or persons.
I'll make a motion.
Make a motion.
Second.
All right. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Noes, abstains, resolution passes. Are we going to make any decisions after this?
There is a possibility of decisions being made after this.
All right. There is a possible decision to be made after this executive session. All right.